Yeah, well, you should start calling me the Midnight Owl, I guess. River John C., Roseman, California. What's going on, guys? It's 1:08 in the morning. Pick up the old phone. Yes, the 26th of May. It is Wednesday. Theoretically, about 20 some odd hours, less than that, we've got a lunar eclipse happening in certain portions of the world. Always fascinating to see those things. So it's one of those eclipses that you can actually see happening without having your eyeballs fried out, unless you're talking about the solar eclipse, and that's a different story altogether. Well, I've been watching earlier this morning, and I've been coming across this every so often, and I'm scratching my head and not confusion, but just reticent about the whole situation. Reform, reform, reform. I'm going to hit my head on the table on this one. Boom, boom. Okay, hit already. You're going to think I'm one of those who don't believe reform works. No, I have heard a hell of a lot about reform and about people's ideas and how reform's supposed to be throughout the decades. And still, as I noted to someone online, the gears grind slowly. And they do grind. People want a quick and easy fix in this one. And they know it's going to be an uphill climb. They keep talking about reform, reform, reform. And every time they keep talking about reform, it's always in the worst portions of cities. Because those are the places that need more and more reform. Because you show the worst of the worst out there. But the thing is you don't see is the affluent, is the rich culture out there. It's the ones with the money, the ones with the manicured lawns and storefronts that look like they're too posh to be real. And instead of seeing beaten down cars or trodden down people, as I call them, you don't see the wealth. No, because every time they keep talking about the reform, it's usually always in the low income to the poverty stricken areas to the places where all the incidents seem to be happening more and more. And the problem is you don't have any context and perspective and clarity at this point. Because you still have to reach those with the money. That's the thing. Now, you notice I'm white. Let's throw it out there. Because you also have this situation there. Because when it comes out for reform, more and more it is the non-white who gets more and more of the attention, more and more of the situation because they're getting more and more beat up or shot and killed or something happens to them. And when we have the videos coming out there, it's usually in the poor areas where the cops really don't care about it or they don't live in the damn community and just driving around just knowing the damn place, but they're not part of the community. And then when I see the reform workers coming out, they are the ones who've been in the system long enough. They want to see changes happening, which is pretty damn good, and they try to do it little by little in the poor and poverty-stricken areas to raise people's hopes and helps and stuff like that. It's pretty wonderful. But after you show that to them, it goes away. Case in point, Rodney King. Everybody keeps forgetting about this damn shit. Now, I know we had the civil rights situations happening a long time ago. And we've had riots happening in the 60s. Hell, part of LA burned down. Part of Watts burned down. They got dedication towers regarding that, demonstrating to people. But the problem is when you lose the context, perspective, history, everything and anything related to what the struggles were back then, doesn't mean a damn shit. You can put up all the damn monuments unless you know the history. It doesn't mean shit. And when I'm seeing the violence happening these days, more and more, because we have digital, we have the means of capturing it. We have what we have right now, video. We have devices. Well, mine's getting charged up right now anyway with the cord. But you know, they got cameras on these damn things, right? Look, boys and girls, they got cameras on these damn things, right? So one would think with the camera on this damn thing, we would be able to capture anything and everything and make it accountable, right? Wrong. Because not everything's captured on film. Not everything that's happening is captured on film or wanted to in the first place. And if you have the apathy and ignorance and indifference happening at this point over here, they're a great barrier to everything that you keep putting up for the reform. And where are they coming from? The people who are not affected at all about it. That's what I'm not seeing. That's what I'm not hearing at this point over here. The people to keep talking about the reform, they need reform so they can help the people of the impoverished. What are they showing? Non-whites. Now you're thinking that this is going to be a pro-white thing at this point over here, and I hate to say part of it. That is correct. Because what I'm not seeing, I mean, I see the marches with all colors and all races in there. That's fine. I am not seeing the neighborhoods being affected more and more about it because they don't care about it. They got more and more of the protection over there. Why would they need the reform? Let the other guys have their reform. We're going to have things as status quo. And that's how it's been. Now, one according to someone who's been interviewed on a news media, someone who tried to start up the Breathe Act, and she was thoroughly convinced that her act would be right and proper about it. And the problem is she couldn't get it passed through Congress. Stalled out. She was going to have more money for community policing. That's fine. For the lower income or for the other ones. But then when you're talking about affecting the people in the upper echelons, the ones who are not getting affected, that's where your barriers are at. Unless these guys are terrorized by it, they're going to continue to go for more and more policing to put the thumb and the screws more into the system. And perhaps she was right concerning part of the history of it. Because what was law enforcement, if we want to put it into historical context, what was law enforcement back in the Dark Ages in different countries? The long arm of the rich and wealthy and the elite. Now you're saying I'm going to be going for the libertarian looking situation over here. Maybe, maybe not. But I just want to put things in perspective at this point over here. When you're talking about, let's see, other than America, earlier than that, when we have the country of Britain forming itself into somewhat of a country instead of an island built up by a lot of fiefdoms. But they were also governed by lords of manors, and then you had the sheriffs. The controls of the fiefdoms, the actual thumb screws. And they had their own little thumb screws called the deputies out there. And they had to make sure that there was quote-unquote law and order coming from the higher ups. So guess where we get our bases from, boys and girls? Not specifically from England, but countries similar to that. We want our laws. We want our order. We have the people that we put faith and trust into a system that's supposed to be theoretically protecting us. This is not saying I'm putting this under the communist group, because even with the communism situation, you still have to have a group of people who've already got the power, have already got other people following them in order to execute that power, to make sure that there's maintained control for this particular group of people here. Wealthy elite. So, okay, maybe I'm one of those kind of extremists at this point. But I'm trying to put things into a certain perspective and context at this point, especially when you keep looking at history at this point. And when I have somebody saying that we have to go to the roots, the roots is sometimes if the power is not given by the consent of the public and just forcibly taken, well, guess what? But we have a country that's supposed to be made up of laws, rules, and regulations. We're supposed to be theoretical. We're supposed to be having the power of the consent given over to the people who are supposed to be governing wisely. Theoretically. Everything is supposed to be theoretical on paper. In actuality, fuck it. But I'm also not saying that we should have our country destroyed either, because we can't deal with it and understand it. Yes, we do need to have reforms happening. But we also have to understand you can change all the lower echelons that you can and try to make sure that they're going to be conforming and complying, and make sure that they're not going to be pissing off anybody else. You have to make sure that you're going to be empowering them to have a voice, that they can make themselves into something better. Keep in mind that you still have the thumb screws from above still screwing down upon you, wondering whether or not the reforms are going to be affecting them or not. When I had taken political science classes at a college, a long time ago, nothing like this was ever talked about. Government 101 in history classes, or even political science back in the 80s, didn't cover this much. It was only that decades later that, as an adult, I went into community college again to broaden my perspectives, my historical context perspective, knowledge base, but also to correct errors that I made a long time ago to myself. And I've been doing it a lot better. But I've also learned a hell of a lot more than what I should have. Because now it pisses me off and scares the hell out of me that if I happen to pursue this particular line, I'm really going to be driving myself insane. I'm thinking that maybe I should be, because maybe I am insane. That the lower echelon people, the ones who are dealing with the minimum wage, or the ones in the poverty-stricken neighborhoods who keep screaming that we need police reform, you're talking about the Lord Minion sheriffs at this point over here that don't give a shit about it. They've got the bases all the way from the Dark Ages and earlier than that with the power elite. And the thing is, in our country, we had given consent to be governed. And we have to keep understanding that they are held accountable to it. And this is why we keep pushing for the reforms and the laws and the acts necessary to get this going. And we're pushing hard against the ones who are going to be affected, because it's going to be affecting their pocketbooks one way or another. It's going to be affecting their livelihood. And if we happen to act up against them one way or another, that's going to be going against the Lord matters, don't you think? So if we're going to be looking at the medieval point of view, as I've been doing it these days, if you want to reform, you got to understand the history of what we're going through, and not besides American history of how the whole damn process started in the first place. You want to go back to the roots? Fine, go through the history. How and why. Then apply that knowledge to the current base here. And a lot of people over here, it's going to go over their damn heads. All they know is they're being oppressed by a government system that doesn't give a shit about them. They're hearing about the corporations and the rich people left and right. And the ones who are enforcing it all are law enforcement that we want to change. They're getting the orders from the above. How are you going to change? How are you going to change the police department? You got to change above. They're not going to change. So we're going to have this constantly here. We can scream reform all we want till the uppers have been affected by it. Now, if they get affected by it, they're going to get pissed off about it and do a knee-jerk reaction and go after people left and right. This is the kind of thing I've discovered these days. More and more readings and more understandings about our political system is that I'm not saying we need a new uncorruptible system. The problem is we have a system that still needs to get fine-tuned, and we need to get everybody involved, including those who are still running the damn things as if they're the Lord Mayors or the Lord Governors or the fiefdoms that we're dealing with. We're dealing with that kind of mentality constantly. The European basis of old. A manifest destiny built into everybody. We should be conquering everybody, left and right. Screw the little guy. And the little guy is fighting back hard and biting back. And therefore, we got more issues going on. Yes, I'm sanguine about this whole situation. Yeah, I'm pissed off about the situation. The thing is, I don't see any changes in this system. The more I keep studying more and more about the history of man at this point over here, there's no way we're going to be changing our entire nature. We need to change our entire our DNA structure, our thought patterns regarding this thing. Until the elitism, until the power elite, the ones who are actually controlling all things, I'm not saying cabals, I'm saying the ones that we've put into power, theoretically, the ones who are financing those who've been put into power. It's those schmucks that you got to worry about. It's those schmucks you got to worry about because they're the ones running things. Yes, I'm probably saying the corporations at this point. The ones with the money bags, the ones in the chambers that think they've got more money than God, and their egos are running higher and faster. So let the other lower people think about the reforms that need. We'll just let them play the games. I hate it when I really started learning about political science and understanding how certain situations happening. And then it starts making sense, and I start becoming a champion for the little guy at this point. Because I'm seeing what the little guy is going against. He's going against history. He's going against precedent. He's going against tradition. He's going against manifest destiny. He's going against ego. He's going against the power of Rome. Do we not understand what we're talking about here, boys and girls? I'm not exactly talking about a Spartacus situation here either. Because we still need to have a form of government that works for us. For the people. Now you have to define that. Who and what is the people? Is it the little guy? Is it the middle guy? Or is it the power schmuck? He, she, doesn't matter. You scream and you yell for reforms. You get the shell and con games. Until the power elite is actually affected and moved and actually turned into humanitarians left and right, it's not going to matter all that much. Because you still have the culture, you still have the attitude, you still have the behavior and the training being passed down from generation to generation. Regardless. That needs to be changed. That needs to be modified. That needs to be worked on. And that is not going to be done overnight. That's going to be done over the millenniums at this point over here until we get that weeded out. If mankind survives that long. Meanwhile, we'll play the shell and con game regarding police reform. Because we're allowed to do so. As I said before, when the 92 riots kicked in, it was the same dress rehearsal for the 1960s riots that we had. And we're doing it again and again and again. The power elites yawning their heads off. They don't care. The lower people are saying we need to get the change and we need to get the reforms going now. We want it now. It's not going to happen overnight. I hate to say it, but it's not going to happen overnight. They said so regarding LAPD. The fiefdom of the city of Los Angeles. Chief Daryl Gates was the fiefdom chief during that time. The Lord Mucky Muck Sheriff of the area. He was also in charge of trying to keep law and order in that area, dealing with the gangs going against each other and gang wars happening in the 80s, and the fighting, the shootings, the stabbings, certain areas you dare not go into without either paying a toll one way or another. Or if you actually looked like you lived in the area, you still had to pay a toll one way or another. And the LAPD had to use units called CRASH, Community Response Against Street Hoodlums. And we had wars against that one. The civil rights attorneys are having field days over that shit. Yeah, take a look at the headlines, take a look at the history on that. I was watching it. I'm a kid growing into the teenage years and growing into adulthood, seeing all this shit happening right in front of my eyes, right in front of the tube, right in front of life itself. And then we get Rodney King. Now, why do I make a difference about this one drunken son of a bitch who was driving on the road drunk? All the cops wanted to do was pull his ass over, put him in the drunk tank. No, he had to go in pursuit. So naturally, we're pursued through the streets of San Fernando Valley until he gets over to Sun Valley. And then what happens? At one particular street, we had several units, 4 cops coming out with badges and attitudes and everything else. And they're sick and tired. They're running through the adrenaline. And this one drunk guy can't even get himself together. So I decided we're going to have a little fun with the guy. If it wasn't for a videotaping that taped the incident of the beating of Rodney King, no one would know about this damn shit. No one. There wouldn't be any repercussions down the road that got lost in time. Just another situation. He could have been another George Floyd, and he wasn't. Came damn close to it. But everyone's forgotten about him. This guy's already had a criminal past. He already had a criminal history. He's already considered a bad guy. He's a drunkard. Who would miss him? If we didn't have the videotape during that time, if we didn't have eyes in the situation at that time, we would have never heard of him. The riots would never have happened. If the guy wasn't testing out his video camera in an apartment across the street from the incident. You can check it out on YouTube on that. The video of it. But it happened. The video got turned over to the media the next day. And what are we hearing? We are hearing precursor to George Floyd. We're hearing a guy who's getting tased and then beaten the shit out of before he gets taken to the hospital. Finally. Concussions, broken bones, smashed up face. He looked pretty. Pretty disgusting. But nothing happened with the cops. Except they're getting more and more notoriety, and Gates is getting more and more pissed off about the situation. He's got to answer over to Bradley about this guy, Mayor Bradley of Los Angeles. Bradley and Gates never saw eye to eye on a lot of things. Bradley wanted reform happening with the cops because he didn't like what was going on. LAPD had a rich history of having things getting turning into situations that we're seeing these days. And everyone keeps forgetting what the hell happened in Los Angeles. We had corruptible cops back in the 20s. We had corruptible cops back in the 30s. But we also had law enforcement, police chiefs coming out there to make changes for the better. We had Chief Parker one time, I believe back in the 50s or 60s. He made a difference in LAPD and how it handles things. He gave a standard of what police departments should have been back. And everyone keeps forgetting about that one. And then we had the police chiefs after that who just either forgot about it or didn't give a shit about it. Because the hoodlums out there have gotten more and more sophisticated, more pissed off, more organized in their territories and drug distributions and gun running and God knows what else they had going on during that time. Again, check the history books on those. So now we got Gates in his time. People have forgotten about this asshole. He came up through the ranks. Got appointed by Mayor Bradley. Probably regretted it ever since. Gates was an asshole cop, but he was fighting a war. I'm not supporting or defending him. I'm just telling you what I saw, what I noticed, and what I kept learning about more and more. He was trying to be a friend of the community, but he was also trying to be a cop that didn't take shit for anything. So here we are in the 80s, where the gangs are getting crazier and crazier. They get more and more outlandish, more organized somewhat, and spread out all over the place, just like a cancer. Still is. I'm not even talking about the motorcycle gangs. That's another Pandora's box right there. I'm just only telling you about the street hoodlums that they had to deal with during that time. Certain streets in San Fernando Valley and also Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, you didn't even go in there. It's not like watching a movie of Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and you're saying what's going on in your history. No. But, almost. We didn't have it that bad. But it felt like it, though, on certain occasions. That's why he was trying to fight against them like crazy. We didn't have community policing. We didn't have cops on the street trying to talk to people and trying to be friends with them or try to get contacts and try to be part of the neighborhoods. No. No, we had the roving bully club. We had cops trying to do an impossible job, getting their asses kicked left and right, and without the community's help on it situation, shit. We had to have neighborhood watches trying to tell the cops what's going on, to be the eyes and ears. We had to have drug programs, educational national programs called DARE, Drug Abuse Rehabilitation and Education Programs. All these nice little flags that says DARE on them that cops were giving out left and right. Like candy. You can't even find those damn things anymore. But they were telling people what was going on, what was so damn important. Drugs are bad. Gangs are bad. Be part of the community. They had one way of telling it. Rodney King said another way. It was an isolated situation. If it was just handled just like a damn street arrest, just arrest a guy without beating the shit out of him, putting him in a drunk tank, nothing would have happened. No. We had to have beatings. We had to have cops with the adrenaline's going crazy at this point over here. And whatever motivations were going inside their heads, they were demonstrating it with their equipment. That also is forgotten. These days, when I'm seeing something about George Floyd and everything else happening afterwards, all the riots, I'm like, everybody's forgotten what happened in the LA riots. That's why schmucks like me have to keep talking about it left and right. So in the weeks afterwards, they're talking about getting the cops arrested and taken off the force. And then it finally happens. But there wasn't enough outrage out there in the streets to say, get these cops busted, get these cops jailed. Let's have a riot. Let's have a protest of the damn thing. Where was the damn protests? Crickets. It's not until we get these guys going. And then they started trying to find venues to put the cops on trial. 4 white cops. Yes, you said it. You heard me say it. 4 white cops. Who the hell's going to be putting these guys on trial? If it wasn't going to be publicized, if we didn't have the attorneys going to be making sure that these guys get prosecuted in the public, one way or another. If it would have been whitewashed. Nothing would have been said. I mean, nothing would have been done. But no, we kept it in the limelight because this was important. We had community active groups, active leaders out there enraged about it. But where was the riots? Where was the protests? Where was the parades? Crickets. Where was the nationwide reaction? Crickets. It was slow on that one. We didn't have the social media like we have today. I mean, we don't have the instant communications like we have these days, like Twitter and Instagram, and God knows what else we got going on. Within minutes, we'd be able to know what's going on in a certain area because we would have videos left to right being posted about the situations happening. Back then, might as well call it the dark ages of communications. We still had video cameras. But the video cameras had to go through the television media, and the media had to be the ones controlling all that damn shit in the first place. So now you think I'm going to be rallying against the media? No, I'm just saying what we had back then. And if it wasn't for enough public pressure onto the media organizations to keep the information out there and alive, it would have been buried alive, but it wasn't. We still had momentum building up because of that video being shown. And I said before, if it was not captured, if that incident was never captured, we wouldn't have any bases or foundations going on of what we have today. It wasn't the start, it was just an addition to the injustice still happening these days that we're still screaming for reforms on. I'm trying to put things in a perspective, in a context here. May sound like a damn professor, but I might as well be a professor at the situation over here. I'm not qualified for any letters for it anyway. Just what I know and what I've seen and what I've been reading and experiencing these days. That's what my videos are. My disclaimer. Because of the hot button nature we're dealing with, white cops at this point over here are going to be put on trial. Not to mention put on media trial. We had to have a venue out there to make sure that we had fair justice. But nobody up and down the state of California, not even Utah or Nevada, Arizona, or anywhere else in the West, would touch them with a 10-foot pole. Nobody wanted to touch this damn lightning rod. They didn't want to get burned. They didn't want to get shocked to death by this damn shit, by all the flack in the media and everything else going on after them. They didn't want the public outcry. One court, by choice, by force, by whatever decision it was, by the powers that be, Simi Valley, California. Keep in mind, this quiet community back then in the 80s, and don't quote me if it's correct or not on this one because I'm still going through memory at this point of what I've been told. They had law enforcement from different agencies living out there that managed and dealt with different areas of Southern California, different regions. See, the cops, from what it was told and what was passed down, They didn't reside in the troubled areas they patrolled in. You have a division that covers a certain area, much like a fiefdom, a small kingdom. You have the little sheriffs with the baron on top. Well, the barons are the elected council members or whatever we've got going on during that time. And because of this, we don't have the deputies living in the area. They're transplanted. They come into the area to manage the area. And then after the shift, they leave for their own safety and security, and they don't get to be bothered by anybody, except maybe in their own little areas that they live in that are normally safe because they are surrounded by their own brethren, but not the areas that they patrol in. The trouble spots, whatever they're in. They don't live in the damn areas. That's what was being told to the public left and right, one way or another. Word of mouth. So even that could be disputed right there. And then I hope that information can be updated and corrected. Because I'd like to find out too sometimes. But back to the story. So here we are. 91, we had the incident in that year. 92 comes the blast. It took them long enough throughout half the year trying to find a venue that would be acceptable to both prosecution and defense. Mostly to defense. They managed to get the worst of the worst. An upscale white area. Yeah, you heard me say it. Of Simi Valley. Of course, they want to think that they're racially mixed during that time. But it was mostly areas of white, and the jury pool was showing that. Again, research it. Prove me wrong, please. I go by what I've been told, what I've learned, what I've read, what I've seen. My own experience. Again, disclaimer. So here we are. We get the jury pool going. We have an all-white jury. They're going to be judging 4 white cops. Protests are happening outside the courthouse. Had to be law enforcement out there to keep the public at bay. And the press. Except for a press pool. They're going to be setting up cameras for this. This is going to be something big because without the public outcry, without the people and the lawyers trying to make sure that this information got put out there in the public for the whole world to see, without that viewpoint, there was no way in hell this was going to be working. There's no way in hell we're going to get 4 white cops found guilty and sentenced without getting the public exposure, without showing how the justice system actually works. Yeah, the justice system really worked on that one, didn't it? 2 months the prosecution was building up its case, and the defense gets in there. And after about nearly 3 months of testimony from both sides, then the jury decides in a few hours. In a few hours. They had months. But then a few hours later, nope, sorry, there's not enough evidence for this guy here. Not enough evidence against this guy here, or that guy here. All 4 of them are innocent. They are acquitted. We should have known back then that this was going to be set up. We should have known this was going to be this way. But the people who wanted justice for Rodney King, for the blacks, against the white cops, against the system, against something. They wanted justification. They wanted clarification. They wanted to say, "Yay, something actually worked forward in our favor over here." Wrong. They should have known that when they picked out certain venues, even San Francisco would have been a better venue. Unfortunately, the damn thing didn't happen in their jurisdiction. It happened in LA County. So we had to go to Ventura County. This happened in LA streets. It should have been happening in the city of Los Angeles. But we couldn't get a jury pool out in Los Angeles City proper or even county to do this damn thing. There was not one courthouse they could have found. There was not enough people. Oh my God, it was insane during that time before the damn trial because these people are bitching and griping about this damn shit all the fucking time. They couldn't get a fair trial anywhere. They're stacked against the cops. A jury poll's going to show that. The cops not going to get a fair trial. And then blocks ago, we need a fair trial. These guys are going to get off. We need to have some people in a jury pool over here that can help out. We need to get these cops prosecuted. They're the ones that did the crime. They should be doing the time. They fought about this damn shit. They fought about it in the courts. I'm trying to find a damn venue. Up and down the damn state, a few other states. They wouldn't touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. Not until Simi Valley raises up its friggin' hand and says, "I'll take him." I should have known it was already stacked against him. My big brother and I had known about it. You know, they were going to be walking on this damn thing. As soon as we heard Simi Valley, my brother's like, "Yep, they're dead. It's done. They've walked." I'm looking at my brother and say, "How the hell you know?" I said, "John, trust me." I should have trusted my big brother during that time. I should have trusted him during that time that there was going to be no justice, no peace. Nope. There was no justice. There was no peace. Only rioting. A couple hours later, Normandy. What was it, Vincent or Normandy? Hold on. Hold on. Get back in the maps again. I mean, I swear, this whole damn shit was going to be... But one area of South Los Angeles, one section of South Los Angeles was going to be the lightning rod for everything. It was going to be hell on earth. But no, we couldn't have that, could we? We couldn't have that at all, could we? Was it Florence and Normandy? Yeah, Florence and Normandy. Reginald Denny was a truck driver. He's rolling his truck through an area because he's doing his deliveries. He's doing wherever he's doing. He's going through the city streets from point A to whatever point B was. He has to get into a start of the riots. Getting his truck attacked. He gets pulled out. He gets attacked. He gets bashed by something porcelain and porcelain. And then kids laugh their asses off left and right. Black teenagers going crazy. And then the looting and the burning. And then the rioting and then the insanity. The anger took its toll on everybody. they started. The news crews with the copters were going all over the damn place watching this stuff going on. They'd seen Reginald Denny getting nearly killed. I don't know what he's doing these days. I don't know if he's still alive. I imagine he still has PTSD over this damn shit. And I don't know if they ever caught the guys and prosecuted them or not. Whatever it was also caught on camera and broadcasted to the rest of the world, or at least to Southern California anyway. The feeds got picked up to the national chain. Then I've heard, decades down the road, that they've also had a few riots here and there in a few other cities. Again, I'm going to have to research that portion there. Because if we did have some riots back then maybe Floyd and King had a hell of an influence on trying to get police reform. The 92 riots inflamed a hell of a lot of anger, a lot of people in the city of Los Angeles. They spread throughout the portions of the county, even beyond the county in certain areas. San Fernando Valley was hit too in certain sections. Then we also had the rioting going on. 4 days of it. The insanity, the pressure, everything. And then the public outcry. More and more. And during that time, Rodney King's trying to tell people, can we not get along? Can we not get along? He was already suffering through brain damage anyway during that time because of all the damn trauma he got from law enforcement. He wasn't going, rah, 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 let's continue all this damn shit. No, he wanted peace at this point over here. It wasn't worth it. He was among police officials. He was among elected officials. He was also among news media, but also a few other people trying to show a coalition of sorts of trying to tell people to settle down, take a moment to breathe for a moment. He was trying to tell people to take a breath. The weeks and months afterwards, we talked about it in the city council chambers. They're arguing about it with the police commission and the chief and the resignations, and then another installment of a police chief. And we wanted to get community policing going on. Gates wouldn't go for it originally. Bye-bye, Gates. Got removed by the commission. Then we got a politician in there, Williams. Chief Willie Williams in his decorative suits. Instead of being a police chief, he was just being a politician, a corporate kiss ass of sorts. But they tried to get community policing going on. Even when they got rid of him, they got Bratton in office for police chief for Los Angeles. They borrowed him. Actually, they got him from New York's Port Authority. Very respected out there, so the stories were told. And it was supposed to be respected out here too. But they tried doing the police reform of trying to get some changes going on. They had community policing until that got taken away by budget cuts and politicians. God knows what was going on. But at one time, for a short time, we were actually able to breathe for a change. Crime rates went down because we actually did have community policing. We actually did have cops on the streets who actually walked the beats, not driving up and down with the damn cars, but walking up and down the place and talking with the people. Hey man, what's going on? How you doing? Hey, riggy diggy man. We're just hanging out, chilling, just watching the people going up and down the street. Well, if you see something screwed up over here, I got a business card over here. Riggy diggy man, I can do that. Actually, some of the policing actually worked for a change with some of the community leaders actually appreciate the cops getting involved in the communities more and more. That bases itself should have continued on, but no, elitism, powers that be, budget cuts, and God knows what else they got going on. So yes, I've seen this go on a few times. The examples back in the 90s didn't exactly stay in people's memories long enough. It should have, but it didn't. We had other things happening. We also had terrorism happening. Then we had to have people going against everybody else at that point. The age of terrorism was still upon us. We really didn't think our United States would be subjected to terrorism from abroad. We already had our own internal terrorists as it is. We had them called gang members. But when you had disenfranchised soldiers out there who got sick and tired of the system or burned out one way or another, let's see, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City bombing. Different circumstances, different people pissed off. And still, I'm glad Oregon, Washington area didn't get its situation, even though I heard that someone who was involved in that situation was going to be running for a Senate seat or a governorship in Idaho, even though he's actually Senate or representative. He's trying to run for Congress. But he's not allowed to go into Washington, D.C., but he's going to be running for it? Good luck. He already burned his bridges when he attacked the federal government. That's one thing you don't do. You don't attack the federal government and expect to be living long enough in your own comfort style. No. Public opinion will burn your bridges that fast. What I've seen concerning about what's been happening these days over the past 20 and 30 years, more of the race riots happening. People have a right to protest. People have a right to demonstrate. People have a right to be pissed off about their situation. They got the First Amendment right to say so. They understand the consequences involved. But they also have to understand who's what in charge at this point over here and how much they're being affected at this point over here. They have to put things in a hell of a lot of context, and their context and perspective has to be broadened a lot more. Yes, people need to be educated in history. They need to be educated what's going on around them currently, but then what were the causes and roots and what was happening beforehand. What was the foundations that led into the situations that they're fighting against. They have to put things into context and perspective at this point over here, and that takes time. That takes a lot of energy, that takes a lot of learning, and that takes a lot of absorbing. That takes time. And people want things instantaneously, like instant cup of soup. It's not going to work. The machine that's already been built and working at this point, you still have to keep attacking at the gears at this point over here. You still have to keep lubricating it. Because if you want the gears to change left and right, you got to keep going against the machine, one way or another. And the fight has to be constant. There has to be a constant pressure on it. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. So yes, keep going with the reform. But understand the reasons why that damn machine was made in the first place. Understand the mechanisms of it. Understand the history of it. The builders, the architects. Try to get a perspective of what the hell's going on. And then put that into a context. Put that into a language. Put that into a format people can actually absorb and understand. And hopefully make the right decisions. That makes the right changes. that hopefully makes the world a lot better than the one we've got right now. End of lecture.